Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, NerdModeOn, and welcome to episode 5 of Battle Tested, a video series where I take user-submitted loadouts and check and see if they would be viable on the battlefield. So for today's episode, we're actually going to be taking a user-submitted loadout by myself. I actually decided to go out there and venture into the loadout screen and decide to do a little bit of differences and try out new attachments and overall go with a theme that was a little bit more orientated around the Battlefield franchise. So of course, considering that the Battlefield franchise is known for being a militaristic type of game, I decided to create a Navy SEAL loadout. Now of course, I'm definitely going to be using some different weapons that are not accustomed to what they traditionally use, especially when it comes down to their current standards, when it comes down to weapons that they occupy when they are deployed. However, we are going to be sticking pretty close to what they traditionally use as well as the high-tech gear that the Navy SEALs are granted. So starting things off, the weapon that we're going to be using today is the M416. Now, of course, this does compare to the Navy SEALs HK416. For the attachments on this weapon, we're going to be using the standard suppressor, the laser light combo, the ergo grip, as well as the holographic sight. Now, of course, just in case you guys are not familiar, EOTech actually manufactures and markets electro-optics. Now, of course, this is more familiar with most gamers as the holographic sights. But of course, while researching a little bit about the holographic sights, it's interesting to see how most games actually don't depict the holographic sights in a traditional and actual realistic manner. I highly recommend that you guys spend a little bit of time and check out what holographic sights actually look like in real life and actually how they're depicted versus what video games depict them as. It's definitely a very interesting argument, and overall I find it to be a pretty interesting thing when it comes down to how Battlefield decided to do it. It's a little bit more cheesy when it comes down to it, especially when you have a hands-on experience. Now, of course, with that said, we're also going to be using the flat desert camo, considering that a lot of the images that I found when it talks about the particular Navy SEALs, it seems like a lot of the times they're using desert camos on their weapon, but that's of course to be more depicted when it comes down to the type of environment that they are actually in. Now for our secondary, we're actually going to be using the P226, which is more familiar with the SIG P226, so of course Battlefield actually does have the particular weapon for this loadout already issued into the game. For this particular pistol, I'm going to be using the Ghost Ring, the green laser sight, the suppressor, as well as the flat desert camo again. For the Gadget 1 slot, we're going to be using the M320HE. For Gadget 2, we're going to be using the medical bag. For the grenade type, we're going to be using the M67 frag grenade. For the knife, of course, we have to go with the seal knife, considering that it complements our particular troop. And last but not least, the field upgrade path, I decided to go with the defensive, considering that it kind of had the flak jacket that would be traditionally within their arsenal, as well as the bulletproof vest, which most militaristic units actually have nowadays. Now jumping into some of the specifics about the M416, this particular weapon does have a rounds per minute of 750 rounds, which is actually on the higher side in comparison to some of its predecessors within its same category. The muzzle velocity clocking in at 600 meters per second, which is definitely not the highest, but it's also not the lowest by any stretch of the imagination, so of course it does complement the weapon very well. Now the damage model for the M416 is actually going to have a maximum damage of 24.5 damage, and of course the drop off will start at 12.5 meters. The minimum damage that this weapon can occupy is 18 damage, and of course that is achieved at 60 meters. Now, of course, considering that we're using the suppressor on our weapon, like most weapons that use a suppressor, the muzzle velocity is significantly reduced from its original value. So in this particular case, the muzzle velocity of the M416 with the suppressor attachment is going to drop all the way down to 340 meters per second. To give you guys a good idea about that, you're most likely going to feel the difference between the original weapon without a suppressor as well as the new and improved weapon with the silence capabilities. So having the suppressor equipped on the M416 does significantly reduce its ability to acquire targets at medium and long range. In any particular case, if you decide to embark upon trying to fight players at those medium and long ranges, you're definitely going to have to compensate for the reduction in the muzzle velocity. Also, moving targets are going to be significantly harder to hit as a due result of having this attachment. Now, of course, the ergo grip is definitely a very interesting attachment since the inception of Battlefield 4. The ergo grips and many other attachments for the most part have seen some major improvements as well as some major reductions in their total effectiveness. Now, of course, the ergo grip from its original stage definitely was able to make you a lot more accurate while moving, but for the most part, you really shouldn't be moving in the first place considering that it gives you a significant reduction to accuracy. Now, of course, with that said, if you're not moving, you're going to get a lot more of a penalty for using this attachment, so I highly recommend trying to figure out what's best for you, and maybe you're more of an aggressive player when it comes down to it, but I quickly found myself trying to use cover and trying to pepper the trigger a lot more than I traditionally do. Now, of course, when it comes down to comparing this weapon to its original state, when it comes down to having it just with no attachments in comparison to where it is now, you can definitely feel a very big difference in terms of its accuracy. The M416 is one of those weapons that's very good when it comes down to being well balanced. Now, of course, for this particular case, we're definitely trying to take away some of the great attributes of the M416. You know, we're reducing its total range, we're reducing its muzzle velocity, as well as its damage at range. So overall, we're taking a weapon that's fairly accurate and easy to use and making it a lot more difficult in comparison to what it could be. However, we also do get some significant benefits that the traditional and standardized version definitely don't have available to it. Using the suppressor in Battlefield has always been one of those high-risk, high-reward systems. While using the suppressor, you'll quickly find that a lot of enemy players don't necessarily figure out what's going on when their teammates are dying around them. Players on the receiving end of getting shot by subsonic ammunition from a silenced weapon don't always exactly figure out what's going on in a timely manner. Their reflexes are slightly delayed as a result, and their senses are definitely hampered when it comes down to having a new noise that is not traditional when it comes down to appearing on the minimap as well as the standardized version of the weapon. Now, as a result of this, you can use this to your complete advantage, and you'll quickly find that you're able to mow down multitudes of different groups without anybody really having an idea of what's completely going on around them or being able to pinpoint your exact position. Now, of course, when it comes down to the ergo grip, it's not necessarily my first choice that I would use for a weapon of this configuration. I feel like the stubby grip would be a much better option, considering that it would at least allow you to increase your overall accuracy at medium and long range. However, if you're a lot more strategic type of player, maybe you're consistently clearing corridors as well as hallways, then maybe this will be something that will be very beneficial to you, considering that it allows you to still be mobile while still having a little bit more accuracy in comparison to not having this attachment. Now, of course, the P226 definitely was a very handy weapon. I've actually really never used it. Prior to this, I probably had under 100 kills, which is definitely a pistol that I don't traditionally use. Many of you guys will hear me always consistently say that the Desert Eagle is deemed as one of the best pistols in Battlefield 4 for a variety of reasons. However, I quickly really enjoyed the P226. I found it to be very effective at dropping multitudes of different players due to its high magazine count, as well as its rate of fire is actually up there when it comes down to it. It allows you to spray down multiple enemies, as well as the hipfire accuracy with the green laser is actually increased, which does make complete sense with this particular attachment. However, I was very surprised by my ability to kind of hipfire players and drop them in an adequate manner. Now, of course, you really can't go wrong with the medical bag. It allows you to heal yourself up while on the move for the most part, and it allows you to kind of find a good corner, especially if you've already mowed down quite a bit of players, and allow you to refill some of your health that might have been depleted while getting shot at. Now, in terms of the M320, you could really pick anything, but I found this to be very effective at allowing me to kind of push through corridors that are not traditionally breachable, as well as just kind of navigating around the map and blowing up players with explosives, so of course you really can't go wrong with taking somebody's leg off in the process. But when it really comes down to it, the M416 is personally one of my favorite all-rounded weapons. It allows me to be aggressive and defensive at the same expense, and it's also a very well-rounded weapon when it comes down to the statistics and the analytics that the weapon upholds in the Battlefield franchise. With a little bit of luck and playing on the right map, you'll quickly find that the suppressor allows you to be extremely sneaky and as well as pick up multiple different multi-kills, especially along the way. It is definitely a very good attachment when it comes down to allowing different players to get behind multitudes of different enemies and mow them down in the process while still not pinging on the minimap. This particular loadout does have a lot of real-world application, and it was really nice to use a weapon that was definitely a little bit more familiar to myself, and I did enjoy the overall experience when it came down to it. Of course, there were frustrating moments along the way, but that's to be expected with anything that's not of a traditional sense, and you do hamper the performance in some particular cases. However, the benefits of the weapon were definitely outweighed by the negatives, and I quickly found that it was a very enjoyable experience while mowing down multiple different enemies. So of course, if you've been looking for a little bit of a weapon that's definitely very well rounded and allows you to definitely be sneaky in the process, then I can highly recommend the M416 in this particular state. But anyway guys, that's really all the information I have for you when it pertains to this particular loadout. Of course, if you guys would like to recommend future ideas for episodes, feel free to let me know in the comments below, considering that I do pick your guys' comments when it comes down to creating these episodes. But until the next episode guys, this has been NMO, and I'm going to be signing out guys. Peace!